Good morning, SoFlo. Welcome to the show. Thank you for watching. Jason Carty here. Always glad to spend my morning with you. And up first today, podcast host and pop culture phenom Danny Pellegrino keeps millions of listeners entertained every week with his insanely successful podcast, Everything Iconic. And now, Danny is giving us a very personal peek into who he is and the experiences that have shaped his life with the release of his memoir, How Do I Unremember This? Unfortunately True Stories. And I'm so happy to welcome Danny back to Inside South Florida. Danny, hi.
Jason, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to see you and get to talk to you.
Yes, I'm happy for you. And this new memoir, How Do I Unremember Unfortunately True Stories? Great title, one. And Danny, when does one decide to write and release their life story? What is that process? Was it you sitting at Starbucks sipping a latte saying, hey, universe, is it time?
Oh gosh, I wish it was like that. You know, I used to work at a bookstore. I spent my high school and college years working at a Borders Books. And so I've always loved books. I was a ghostwriter before I started my podcast. So I had written books for other people. And I always had in my mind that I wanted to do not necessarily like a life story thing, but a story collection. Some of the books that I loved growing up, things like David Sedaris, authors like David Sedaris, or more recently, Casey Wilson, have great essay collections that are just funny stories that people can read and sort of check out of their own lives and hopefully relate. The book is loaded with pop culture references and a lot of nostalgia. And I just want people to pick it up and have a good time and read it by the beach or on their spring break. And hopefully people will enjoy it.
On your podcast, Everything Iconic, you invite your guests to fuse and reveal so much about their life. How different was it revealing and comedic detail and sometimes emotional detail about your life?
You know, I tried to lean in. I knew that there were going to be a couple topics that would be a little bit harder for me to write about. I talk a little bit about my depression. I talk about grief as it relates to my grandmother's passing. And the books that I always loved the most, they are usually funny, but they tend to tap into that really human emotion. And I remember when I was a kid, I really loved the book Bridge to Terabithia, which is a children's book that deals all about death. And I think people can handle a lot more than we give them credit for. And so, of course, I want the book to feel like a big old warm hug. But then I also, I tried not to stop myself from diving in a little bit deeper and talking about those harder things. And I was nervous. And even as the book is now coming out, I'm feeling so vulnerable and stressed and hopeful that people enjoy it. So far, people seem to be really enjoying it, but I have been scared and nervous for people to read specifically those parts of the book. Those chapters were in particular just, they were tough, but I hope people read it and feel less alone.
Reading this book, Danny, and I know you, and you are this bundle of joy. It was so freeing and a little bit relieving for me to see someone as yourself saying, hey guys, I was also that kid. It's okay. It does get better. And again, the pop culture references were so on the money. Okay. I had to go and find my Butterfly cassette tape released in 1997 to have a moment with you through your words, because you mentioned and referenced Mariah Carey's piece de resistance of the 90s. So thank you for that, Danny.
Thank you. You know, Jason, I know we share that in common. Of course, you and I could talk about Mariah Carey all day long. But totally. It was fun to kind of revisit a lot of those pop culture touchstones that I think so many of us have, whether it be the Mariah Carey albums or movies and TV shows, NSYNC, whatever it is. Right. There's tons of references loaded in there that I think, particularly 90s kids, but I think anyone at any point in their lives, they'll be able to relate to hopefully some or most of those pop culture references that are just littered throughout. And I tend to talk in pop culture references, so I wanted the book to feel that. I wanted the writing to feel that way as well.
Do you feel that the story that we get, the moments that we get, the life that you tell us about throughout the words on those pages, is it all encompassing of Danny Pellegrino?
Yeah, I think it is. I think I tried to include as many different parts of myself as I could. And I'm really proud of how the book turned out. And I'm hopeful to be able to keep writing more and more books and hopefully to keep sharing more and more stories and different sides of myself. But I look at it now as I'm done and it's getting out into the world. And I do feel the most, maybe it's gross of me to say, but I feel the most proud of this than anything I've ever done. And so I am so happy and excited that people are receiving it and hopefully they'll get something out of it.